Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to be making a sultana cake. I love sultanas, so nice and juicy, but these ones are soaked overnight in some cold black tea, which makes them even plumper. Now there's no butter in this cake. The moisture comes just from an egg and from the plumpness of the sultanas and the residue of the tea that hasn't actually seeped into the sultanas after they've soaked overnight. I'm also going to add some spice, some mixed spice into my cake. Now I think this recipe probably originated from a book by Delia Smith. From what I've seen on the internet, I've seen the same recipe on a good many sites, and I think one of them mentioned a Delia Smith book, the others don't mention anything. So I can't actually give an attribution, but I've varied the recipe to the extent that I'm using some mixed spice as well. So onto the ingredients. We have 225 grams of sultanas, but they have been soaking. You need to soak them for at least 5 hours in some cold black tea, and I've used 175 millilitres of cold black tea for that. I have 225 grams of self-raising flour, a teaspoon and a half of mixed spice and a pinch of salt, and I'll put those into the flour straight away. Then I have 175 grams of demerara sugar. I have one large egg, which would be extra large in the US, and I've beaten that, and I have 20 grams more demerara sugar just to sprinkle on the top before I put it into the oven. So it's a very simple recipe, and you preheat the oven to 180 Celsius or 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit, and you need a 2-pound loaf tin, which you can either grease with butter or line it with parchment paper, or as I have done here, line it with one of these loaf papers. So onto the mixing. The first thing we want to do is to put our sultanas and tea into a mixing bowl, and then we're going to sift the flour and spices in. Now I'll just give those a bit of a mix to get the spice and the salt mixed into the flour, and I'll sift the flour in. I don't actually know that you need to sift it, but I'm going to. And the smell of the mixed spice is just wonderful. Okay, and then I'm just going to mix that in with the sultanas. Then to that I'm going to add the demerara sugar and stir that in. Now if you don't have demerara sugar, I suppose you could use almost any sugar. Golden caster sugar might be a good substitute, but demerara sugar does have a slightly different flavour to it, but not the rich molasses flavour that you get from the soft brown sugar or muscovado sugar. And so, with that mixed in, I'm then going to put the egg in, And as you can see, it's not a particularly wet liquid, and it's going to be rather sticky when we finish mixing. But as it cooks, the flour will leach some of the moisture from the sultanas, so it will stay nice and moist. Okay, so that's mixed in. It does take a little bit of mixing because it's a very stiff mixture. So what I'm going to do then is to spoon that into the loaf tin, making sure I get it into the edges. Right, and I've levelled that off as best I can, and then I'm just going to take this 20 grams of demerara sugar and I'm going to sprinkle some of that over the top. This is going to be quite a rustic loaf, as you can see, and I'm going to put that in the oven and I'm going to bake it for 1 hour. I'll test it after about 50 minutes with a skewer, and I would expect it still to be a little bit sticky, but as soon as it comes out clean, the skewer, then I'm going to take it out of the oven and I'll leave it to rest for 15 minutes before I take it out of the tin. So I'll be back with you after I've allowed it to cool for 15 minutes. Okay, so I'm back with you and I've taken our cake out of the oven. It baked for 58 minutes. A skewer in the centre came out clean, and I've allowed it to cool down completely. Now, as you can see here, it's nice and full with those lovely plump sultanas, and I've sliced it, so I'll just take a bite. That's so good. The demerara sugar that I sprinkled on the top has gone nice and crunchy, so it gives it a nice crunchy topping. Those really juicy sultanas are lovely and sweet as well, and you've got that hit of mixed spice. This is ideal. From reading, it seems to say that the flavour gets even better if stored in if the cake is stored in an airtight container for a couple of days, but it tastes wonderful now. I've even seen some suggestions where you serve it with butter and then you spread butter on it, but it's ideal just as it is with a cup of tea. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click on the subscribe button to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen you'll see an eye that you can click on to get to the recipe, or you can click a link below the video that I will put, and you can get to the recipe that way. And I will be back with you with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.